Anyway.
What were we talking about? Why did I bring that up?
I don't know. Thanks for describing to everyone what 90 Day Fiance was. People come from all over the world. It's a thing.
I don't remember what I was talking about. Welcome back to another edition of Zero Block 30. Today we have 4 rounds in the magazine. Round number 1. We'd be remiss if we didn't address this immediately. There's a motorboat gate that's making major waves across the Army right now. Will anything change in its wake? Probably not. This is a difficult story to talk about because there's elements that just on its face, just with wording alone, you're like, that's funny. And then you read it and you put it in perspective and you're like, this is the least funny thing that's ever happened in the history of the world.
Yeah. Motorboating tends to be, after wedding crashes especially.
Yeah.
Very silly thing. Not silly this time.
Motorboat. Do you think that's like the most sexually suggested phrase that's uttered in the last 20 years?
You're motorboating son of a bitch?
Yeah, it has to be, right?
Yes. It's
because so many other things are frowned upon. Like I would say probably 80s calling somebody a cocksucker was pretty good.
Yeah, now that's a no-no. Right.
You don't see that now.
Yeah. But this puts a damper on it. This puts a big time damper on it.
It really does. Motorboating and cocksucker, both ruined. Like if you're doing them serious. No, you can do one of them. Fine. In fact, more than 50% of the population does that. Right?
Round number 2.
George Bush had a big time snafu moment this week, which brings up the topic of Freudian slips. Old Bushy boy up there giving a fucking speech, and everybody that's giving Biden shit. It's not easy when you're 75. We actually talk about that in round number 4 too, that we're just sick and tired of the old. Like that's a big theme in round number 4. Round number 3, we got some terrible news. Congress is losing their right to exercise on those Peleton bikes. Who knows if there's going to be any big time.
Peleton.
Is that what it's called? Peloton? I thought it was Peleton.
Peleton? No, what is this?
I don't act like I'm fucking poor.
You on Star Wars landing on
this fucking poor bitch doesn't know anything about bike ride naps.
Are you with Boba Fett landing on planet Peleton? No, it's a Peloton.
No, dude. Me and Jack Nicklaus always ride our Peleton bikes together.
Right, we had a major sports podcast where one of the podcasters thought it was pronounced Jack Nicklaus instead of Jack Nicholas.
Thank you for not saying the name of part of my take and keeping that under the radar. We don't want people finding out about that podcast.
Philly football.
Exactly anyway, right.
Yeah. I don't want to steal their shine.
And finally, round number 4, we're going to have former Congressman Will Hurd on the show. He stops by to tell us about his new book and all the things that he's doing and being a positive person. Like he's not looking at everything glass half empty. He's like, hey, we got a chance to fill this glass back up.
And he's the one who, in a time when things are so like left and right, blah, 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 he is one of the people I feel like actually trying to unite everybody. And who did he ride across the country in a car with?
Beto O'Rourke.
Yeah, he's rode across the country with Beto O'Rourke, who's on the opposite side as him. And I forget what happened, but they ended up having to take a car because of weather or plane problem or something. And he was like, fuck it. Why don't we ride together? And they, whatever. Anyways,
live stream their entire conversation.
Live stream the whole conversation. They had a good time.
Which gave us the idea. And we said that that's what then President Trump and Joe Biden should have done together. They should have just taken a trip down 95 and had it and see who's just going to out-talk
Purple PT Cruiser with flames on the side. Biden and Trump just cruising. Stopping at the fireworks spot.
In all actuality, that ride would be hilarious. Because they hate each other so much, and neither one of them can keep a train of thought for longer than like 10 or 15 seconds. It would just be an absolute nightmare.
So many peace stops. Yeah.
Just sitting back with the boys, watching old President Trump and President Biden just chew the fat while sipping on a little bit of Whistle Pig whiskey is exactly how you want to get your night going, because Whistle Pig whiskey is created with the first 100% rye whiskey, perfect for sipping and mixing. It's made with 100% rye whiskey for a bold, full, spicy flavor. It's a bartender's dream. Everybody that has it likes it. I have not met somebody who's like a whiskey person that's like, I don't like this. This is not good.
I had somebody tweet at me last night saying, I'm at a bar right now. I heard you guys on the pod, so I decided to try it. They tweeted a picture of the glass. They're like, it's delicious. But then I wanted to retweet it. They also said, hope your diarrhea gets better, Kate. So I decided not to combine the two. But they tried it.
That being said, how's that going?
Still working through it.
Yeah.
I can't wait till I feel better so I can have as Friday, I crack open my whistle pig. So.
Well, there you go. You can do the same thing by going to shop.whistlepigwhiskey.com or get it from a local realtor. Lots of things happening today, but I would be remiss if I didn't start the show by giving a huge shout out to this mom that's in Canada that I saw. Kate, are you familiar with this story? There was a woman who she's in Canada. She's breastfeeding her child during the morning hours. And apparently they have like a bunch of geese that are constantly around this little pond that lives behind their house. All of a sudden, a huge eagle flies out of nowhere, grabs one of these geese by the fucking neck and starts pulling it into the middle of the road to like eat it out in the middle of open. This mom, wearing nothing but her fucking panties and has a baby attached to her boob, comes flying out the double doors and is like, hey, get off that goose. And she runs over.
This is the most Canada shit to
It really is.
happen.
This baby doesn't leave the mom's breast like whenever she like still feeding. And the eagle sees the mom coming, knows this has mama bear instincts. I'm the fuck out of here. Drops the goose. Mom doesn't miss a beat, turns around. The goose looks up at the lady, follows her back to the house, and it's just like, thanks, man. So huge shout out to her. Badass of the week.
Dude, there are videos like I struggled the whole way through breastfeeding. I would watch videos of other moms breastfeeding and try to mimic and hold my son the way they were holding their kids because we could not figure it out. We were like two puzzle pieces that just did not fit. I was like, something like, what is wrong with me that I can't even hold him right to whatever. And then I look online and I see a mom like climbing a rock wall while she's breastfeeding a baby. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing wrong? And nipples
stretched out like it looks like one of Stretch Armstrong's arms.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So very, it's for some, it's very easy. For some, it's for many of us, it's not that easy. That poor goose would have died on my watch. I would have been fumbling around with my nipples still.
I mean, how traumatic would that be? If you didn't feel like there was something you could do in that moment, you're breastfeeding and you're just like, what do I do?
My son's really crying because he can't latch. I'm crying because my nipple hurts. The goose is crying because it's dying.
And you can hear this goose. The goose is honking away the whole time.
Yeah.
I would too. If I'd be honking my ass if I had an eagle around my neck.
I didn't see that video this week. I saw one where there's a bunch of tourists on a cliffs, like almost looked like so steep that you would only see goats on it. But there's a bunch of tourists clinging to these rocks.
People don't talk enough about how good climbers goats are. It's incredible.
Dude, it truly is.
They'll climb up an olive tree, so lickety split.
When I went to Ireland with my family and there was all these goats on this cliff and my dad's like, goats are the most sure-footed animals of all time. We turn the corner. There's a goat dead splattered on the sand. Anyway,
you make one mistake. That's it. It's curtains.
You can't slip up. That's for sure. Right. Anyways, there's these tourists.
Free solo.
Circle back to my original. There's these tourists on this cliff or whatever, and a little boy who's maybe like 3 years old. This eagle flies down out of nowhere, clings onto his back, and tries to rip him off the cliff. Like all these tourists had to jump and hold him down, and like they're like fist fighting this fucking eagle from taking this kid off this cliff. It's a real, I looked it up on Snopes. It's a real video. Like that's what they do. They try and rip animals off cliffs. So they almost took this little boy, like a fucking boy. Eagles are badass, man. It's crazy.
They really are. And they're dangerous. Yeah. I mean, you know me, and I have my beloved baby Dale Woohoo, who's just a tiny little bugger. And we're out here in the backyard and he's just gallivanting around, not caring about anything in the sky. I'm like, baby Dale, get your little ass over here. There's hawks in the sky. You
got to get him one of those vests that has the spikes on the back.
I've thought about ordering them.
Every year in New York City, I swear to God, every year, some rich lady with a penthouse and a patio, her little fluffy dog gets sniped by a peregrine falcon that lives up on like the Empire State Building. It happens every year here. It's crazy.
And now they have those little things that you could put on. It has spikes and all kinds of things to protect those little fellas. And ladies, don't want to be ugly there.
Thank you.
You don't want to be ugly. Before I make a couple more mixed steps, let's go into round number 1.
Right.
Talk about what we got here.
Again, want to preface this by saying this story is not funny. It's like so beyond funny. Mm-hmm. It's like genuinely, the more I read into it, the more upsetting it was. But every time you think the military cannot shock you with its incompetence when it comes to dealing with sexual assault, They go ahead and they just flip you on your head. I read this when I first read this because you sent it to me. It was a Reddit clip you sent me, and my monocle fell off my face.
I legitimately thought, because I saw it originally on Not the Onion on Reddit. I thought that I had accidentally gone to the Onion Reddit. Like, that's what I thought. I was like, this is clearly satire. I thought it was like,
when somebody tries to be like the Onion, but they miss and it's like very not funny. You're like, oh, okay, like whatever. Like, I thought it was that. So this was the Reddit post: Captain Motorboats Sergeant during promotion ceremony. Okay, folks, who was there? Spill the beans. So it's someone on Reddit being in this military Reddit being like, somebody had to have seen this if this is true. And they were posting that based off this tweet by this guy, Captain Chad. It said, in today's edition of Who the Fuck Thought That Would Go Well, a captain motorboating a sergeant during their promotion ceremony. Somebody in the thread replied and said, this is 100% true. This happened at AJ, that's base. I'm here now. This captain pinned the rank on the female soldier with his teeth and then proceeded to motorboat her in front of the formation. Now, this Reddit post has hit the news, and we're going to get into that in a second. But first off, there is a photo of the aggressor, of this officer. Let me give you the general vibe of this loser. Squished human thumb face, no lip having, droopy skin, pale ass, turkey waddler neck dangling, car doors wide open, ears looking, beady-eyed, small brain, disappearing eyebrows, no nostrils, ass motherfucker. This teeny little head on a big soft potato body sack clown, loafer wearing, weirdo pervert creepo, any penis, no balls, no backbone having, motorboat son of a bitch. And you know what the worst part of this is? Like, this guy, as soon as you look at him, you're like, this is a fucking loser. Like, genuinely, you look at him and you're like, this guy sucks. Anybody who ever had to serve with this guy is like, oh yeah, that fucking guy. He's that guy. You look at him and you're like,
he is 1,000% that
guy. I think the worst part of this is that he did it. He announced he was going to do it. We'll get into this in a second. He did it in full view in front of others. And why? Well, one, besides being a piece of shit, he felt fully comfortable to do it because in the Army, he thought there would be no repercussions for it. Like, that's the environment that this guy was truly living in. That was the reality of the situation of that command, that he thought he could get away with something that egregious just fine.
And he was right.
And he was right because, yes, and this is the part where it actually gets worse. So this is Davis Winkie at the Army Times. I am just so damn tired, Jeps. A former Louisiana National Guard officer was allowed to retire after a general court-martial convicted him of charges stemming from motorboating a subordinate soldier during an informal promotion ceremony while deployed to Jordan in May of 2021. Well, was allowed to retire, of course. Captain Billy Joe Crosby Jr. That should have been the first sign. Billy Joel Crosby Jr.
Well, I don't like that because, as you know, my first girlfriend in kindergarten was Billy Joe Carswell, and that's very no.
You probably dodged
Billy
the bullet.
No, Betty Joe. I was like, Billy would be very different names. Keep going, Kate.
Yeah, but so Captain Billy Joe Crosby Jr., a logistics officer who was overseas with the 256th Infantry Brigade combat team during its recent deployment, was initially charged with abusive sexual contact and conduct unbecoming an officer. Crosby was the officer in charge of an outpost in Jordan. Major Jessica Rivero, a spokesperson for the command, told Army Times that Crosby's behavior is not in line with Army values. I would argue that that's not true, according to how the rest of this went. The guilty plea came with strings attached that he gave there. The officer struck a deal that, one, erased the abusive sexual contact charge. He pled guilty to assault consummated by battery, a non-sexual offense, and conduct unbecoming, records reveal. Crosby, a prior enlisted soldier who participated in the 89 invasion of Panama, was confined for 30 days. The plea deal also prevented the judge from dismissing him from the Army, which would have kept him from collecting his retirement. So he basically got off scot-free besides that 30 days. Louisiana National Guard spokesperson confirmed that Crosby retired on March 31st after completing his confinement. He got to go home. He did not respond to an email request for comment. He's probably too busy celebrating with his retirement.
I wonder why this is. And I know that a lot of times in like the civilian police world and Justice Department, things like that, it's if the prosecutor thinks that it's going to be difficult for them to prove an element of the crime, which is often the intent side of sexual conduct like this, like proving that intent is difficult. I wonder if the prosecutor looks and knows, like, maybe I can't get a conviction. I just don't understand in the current climate how even as a judge, you have like a lack of foresight to know that this case is going, there needs to be an actual punishment. This is not a punishment. And he did it in front of an entire formation. So it's not like there wasn't witnesses.
Yeah, so what exactly did he do? When he learned that the junior soldier was selected for promotion, Crosby reportedly announced to her twice that he intended to motorboat her during her promotion ceremony because the Army combat uniform's chest-placed rank patch was intended for such actions, which clearly is not. And this is like, I understand that this is the captain involved, but there's no shot that wasn't other senior NCOs there, like a staff sergeant, a first sergeant, something like that. There had to have been. Well, we get into, it says that an NCO witnessed both statements. Like, other people were around when he said this, according to a motion filed by prosecutors. Then the prosecutors had to describe motorboating, when a person places his or her face between a woman's breasts and shakes his or her head back and forth while making sounds resembling a boat motor. I mean, that's an absurd thing in court. Weeks before the assault, Crosby also told that NCO that he wanted to bring the junior soldier with him. Also told the NCO, I guess the one who had overheard, that he wanted to bring that junior soldier with him on a diving trip to another base in Jordan. The NCO told investigators that Crosby requested the soldier's company because he liked looking at her tits. Earlier when I was reading this, I felt like rage. The junior soldier told Crosby the day before the assault that she did not want a promotion ceremony. And for people that I saw in the comments being like, well, he told her ahead of time, blah, blah, blah. You have no idea what it's like to be a junior soldier, to stand up for yourself. Like, you think you're going to get in trouble and your rank and everything's going to be fun. Like, you have no idea what it feels like.
And how do you place the blame on the person who was assaulted rather than the assaulter? Like, it's a constant thing. Like, what you're wearing. Shut the fuck up, man. Like, it shouldn't have to be a thing where she says, I don't want this ceremony to go down like that. It shouldn't even be an option if she wanted it to happen. If it was her request, because a lot of times your promotion and reenlistment, you have the ability. If her request was, sir, I'd like you to motorboat me whenever you put these on, his response should have been, no, this is inappropriate, unprofessional. This is not becoming of what we do here. Like, the entire way that this happened is insane. And I think that sometimes the NCOs here there had to have been someone who is willing to put your neck out and being like, the fuck you are? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
As we read into this, we'll get more into it in a second. So she tells him the day before, I don't want a promotion ceremony, which clearly says to me, like, she's already uncomfortable. She wants nothing to do with this guy. But during work, because look at him. I mean, your creep vibes go off the moment he walks in the door. Yeah, but during work the following day, according to a prosecution motion, Crosby approached the junior soldier, told her to stand up. He just walked in and did this. She had no warning. Placed the rank in front of her chest, leaned in to grab the rank with his teeth, and then placed his face between the junior soldier's breasts and vigorously moved his head from side to side while still holding the rank with his teeth. I'd like to think, if anyone else in that room, if I was sitting there, why didn't somebody get up and knock this motherfucker out right there?
Right.
Why didn't somebody get up and fucking murderlack this guy?
Because you would not get in trouble. If you did that, if you saw that, like, defense of others, in sexual assault, that's a sexual assault, plain as day.
Well, you want to think that, chaps, but then you see that nothing happened to this guy. So maybe you would get in trouble for it. Like, what the fuck? It's not clear when the crime was reported, nor is it clear who reported it, but court documents indicate that the agents from the Army CID were interviewing witnesses within 2 weeks of the incident. Crosby, who initially declared he would plead not guilty, changed his plea after negotiating a deal that reduced the charges and protected his retirement.
And that would never, ever, ever happen to an enlisted man.
Never. Dude.
Never.
Fucking never. Although the deal took away the possibility of an other than honorable discharge, so this motherfucker still got an honorable discharge, chaps, and reduced his maximum confinement to 120 days, the judge lightened it even further and only gave him 30 days, and he did not direct a reprimand, fines, or forfeitures. Literally Nothing happened to this guy. And what, like, reading that is so traumatizing. What happened to her. Like, that is fucking terrible. The Army might as well have issued a statement saying, you got us. We don't give a shit about women, victims, assault, whatever. It's all been for show. LOL. I added that part in, but that's what the Army might as well said with this case. Crosby's brigade had other disciplinary issues during its 2021 mobilization, which saw most of the unit sent to the Middle East. Some other elements of the brigade went to the federally controlled mission at the U.S.-Mexico border. There, a Louisiana Guard cavalry troop operating in South Texas was temporarily disbanded after widespread issues with sexual harassment, discipline, and command climate. The state returned its troops from the border mission a month ahead of schedule after 2 soldiers died in alcohol-related incidents. So to recap, a National Guard officer planned to assault a junior officer over the course of several weeks, stated his intent clearly to assault her twice. Then he assaulted her in front of others during a surprise event that she did not want. And he pleads out with retirement and 30 days relaxing in the clink and perfect retirement and nothing else. And we wonder why victims don't come forward. And we wonder why nobody believes the Army or the military at large when they say that they're looking out for its troops. Like, what the fuck? Am I crazy?
I mean, this should be the easiest slam dunk case because you have witnesses that saw it. This should not be a difficult thing to prove. It should not be a difficult thing to reprimand somebody for. And for the judge to back down the plea agreement is insanity. Like, even on its face as a plea agreement, it's a ridiculous plea agreement. And then for the judge to be like, it's too harsh. Let's knock it down some days. Crazy time. And no forfeiture of rank, no forfeiture of pay. Like, what? Yeah, it's insanity. And of course, now that this story is out, every time stories like this come out, a flood of other people being like, oh, yep. It's one of those things where you hear it's not who we are so many times that it is. Like, if you have to say it over and over again, it's not who you are. It is who you are. That is who you are.
Victoria Kozit said to everyone acting outraged, as a second lieutenant, my company commander announced to everyone at the hail and farewell that he wanted to yank my shirt down and expose my breasts because he thought my shirt was provocative. It was a peasant top with a blazer. Micah Abel said, while my company commander and I were standing with our wives at a hail and farewell, my CO told my wife that she was so hot he wanted to eat her like a French fry. He did it right in front of him. And these are guys, they know that they can say whatever the fuck they want, do whatever the fuck they want. And they do. Michael Walker said, we had a battalion commander wasted at the ball tell a first sergeant's wife, with all of us standing there, to include the first sergeant and CSM, how hot she was. And I don't know how that first sergeant didn't redecorate the halls with him. Nothing happened there either. Missa Hartstad said, when I was GS, my rear detached sergeant major propositioned me. And then I found out that the 4 female soldiers I worked with and had worked out a system to never be alone with him, nor 2 other soldiers who freely stared at our chests. We were supposed to just act like everything was normal. Fucking Army. There was so many stuff. We could have gone on forever. One of my good friends who is an officer in the Army, who I look up to her so much. She's like the most. She once told me a story about their unit Christmas party where her CO was dressed up like Santa Claus and pulled her down. She was an officer too. Pulled her down on his lap in front of all the other officers, and she was trying to get off it, and he wouldn't let her go. Like, holding her down on his lap. And this is other people standing around watching, feeling comfortable, and nobody, all these brave military people, and nobody suddenly has a backbone when that shit goes down. It's like, what the fuck, dude?
And it's self-preservation. I mean, that's self-preservation. Really what it is.
And it's insane. It's just wild. I had a dumb joke as a way to lighten the end of this, but I don't feel like doing it because it's just not funny, man. It's just so genuinely not funny. And
it's just par for the course, really. I mean,
it really is. So, all
right, let's move on to round number 2. We're going to talk about something that when I first saw the headlines coming across and different tweets coming across that were mentioned, what was said by President Bush, I thought this has to be doctored. There's no way.
Much like story 1, you're like, this cannot be true.
Right. And it's proving again and again that the internet is basically, you cannot do a parody of it. It's a parody in and of itself. From the Dallas Morning News, we have some news about President Bush, who was trying to give a stirring speech about the situation and what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, this clip has gone mega viral. So quick background. In some of his most extensive public comments about the Russian invasion of Ukraine since the war began, former President George W. Bush on Wednesday compared Ukrainian leader Zelensky to Winston Churchill while decrying the increasing autocratic Russian regime. Bush noted that Zelensky, who he described as a cool little guy.
And honestly, like you can say what you want to about President Bush and people either love him or hate him, or I guess there's some that are probably indifferent to him now. Yeah. But like the public perception of President Bush has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Like when he left office, I would say that the left probably hated him more than any president that I can remember, like more so than Reagan, more so than his dad. Like they fucking hated him. But he also has this Southern Texas charm, and that's the reason why he got elected as president, where he was a co-owner of the Rangers and like a big-time sports guy. Now watch this drive. His viral clip when he was talking about how he was going to go out and kill bin Laden and then watch me drive. He has these little moments where you're like, this dude is fucking cool. Like Colin Zelensky's in the middle of this shit. He's this cool little guy. Like it's just so.
Zelensky's just a cool little guy.
It's just such a Bushism.
Yes, it very much is. He was in, so he's giving this speech. Bush made comments during an event at his presidential center at Southern Methodist University. The event examined the state of democracy and the safety of American elections in the shadow of former President Donald Trump's refusal to concede his loss to Biden, ensuring the insurrection at the Capitol, blah, blah, blah. Bush's former Secretary of State, Condoleezza Rice, said during the panel, blah, blah, this, let's just get to the heart of the matter here.
Right.
By the way, I didn't know Condi was a big Russia expert. I know the guy that, what's his face, had a crush on her, that Syrian Gaddafi guy. That was weird. Anyway, during his
the Syrian Gaddafi guy.
You know that guy.
Libya.
Yeah. But anyways, during this 10-minute speech, Bush made a verbal faux pas that went mega viral. He was referring to Russian President Vladimir Putin, whom Bush noted had brutally stifled popular dissent and had political opponents imprisoned. Let's play that clip. Let's see if you can pick out where he went wrong.
In contrast, Russian elections are rigged. Political opponents are imprisoned or otherwise eliminated from participating in the electoral process. The result is an absence of checks and balances in Russia and the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of of Ukraine. Iraq, too. Anyway, 75. Here's the
wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. Of Ukraine. Yikes.
And then given how old he is, which I appreciate, because it's like he knows his fuck up was so bad that the only thing like, hey guys, I'm fucking old. Like, I don't know what you want from me, but I'm old. And he's still younger than Joe Biden.
Well, then after the awkward silence for him to shrug and say, well, Iraq too. Like he made it. He's like admitting it. He's like, yeah, that was fucked
Which I think that would do a lot of healing. I don't think it's something that
the
Bush
crowd
would ever
it.
do.
They erupted with laughter. They're like,
if he did a speech where
enough.
He was like,
Fair
this
enough.
was a mistake. Like we thought that the intel, like, cause he's never really came out and said this was a huge mistake. And I'm sorry that American lives were lost there. Like, and we joke around about it, but it is true. Like Paul from Task and Purpose, the editor in chief over there, like he was talking about, like my friends died in Iraq. I got shot personally. I got shot in Iraq.
Got shot.
Like
right.
I loaded friends onto helicopters and body bags. Like we're joking around about it, but now looking back at it, you're like, why the fuck were we there? What did we accomplish? And to not hear from the commander in chief that sent you there really is a travesty. Like it should be like, hold yourself accountable. Like all the different people who did wrong things on service members, you're held accountable for your actions. The only ones are the ones that are at the top of the pyramid. And that only works in government. It's so insane that the people who are doing the bidding of those at the top of the pyramid are the ones who are held accountable whenever there's atrocities, and not the ones who are the actual real long trigger pullers.
Oh yeah. That was part of like the injury I felt at the end of Afghanistan. I was like, where is the accountability? It would have helped a lot to hear people be like, well, we fucked up. They
did the same thing today.
Up.
Kate, I don't know if you knew or not, but the DOD released a statement that they had their inspector generals look into this drone attack that happened in 2019, and it killed a bunch of people in Syria. It killed like 36 people in Syria. And they said that there was no, like what they did was justify, and then a majority of the people that were killed were the actual targets that were involved with no proof behind it or anything. And the DOD investigating the DOD is bizarre. Like, of course you're not going to say, oh yeah, we fucked everything up here.
Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, Bush, he makes this mistake, which a Freudian slip is what many are saying. They're calling it one of the biggest Freudian slips of all time. So again, more than 4,000 American troops were killed in Iraq, along with probably hundreds of thousands of Iraqi civilians. And yeah. So anyway, people are calling this a massive Freudian slip, and that, like, you know what that is. I'm not going to get into it, but it made me think, to lighten it up a little bit, I went to find some other people sharing stories of their big time Freudian slips. It's hard to transition from that one. I know.
It is, but that was, I like, this was just hanging out with the pals at the bar. Like, it's a Freudian slip. I'm not going to get into it right now. I know what it is. You know what it is. Let's just fucking move on.
Yeah. Anyway. Blue Macaw
said, it's a Freudian slip.
We all know. I can't really explain it, but you know what I mean when I say it. This woman.
Have there ever been terms like that, like Freudian slip, where you're just completely wrong about what it meant? Like platonic love was one for me. Like, I thought that the actual, what platonic love actually means is a relationship between a grown man and an adolescent. Is what it means. Like, we have a platonic relationship because it comes from the Platonic form of teaching, like the Socratic method of
what, dude?
What?
Stop.
It does.
What?
It is. So like about? I'm saying you use a phrase colloquially.
How did we get here?
And then you go back and you're like, where the fuck? Because clearly, I think most of the listeners got that maybe you don't know what a Freudian slip means.
What is a platonic relationship? One in which people share a close bond, but do not have a sexual relationship.
Yes, but that's what it's become. The words and definitions change over time. The original platonic relationship is between a grown man and an adolescent boy.
Okay, but when were you using that term regularly? Like, it's a thing. What?
That's what it was used back in the day, and it has changed over time.
Okay.
Like Freudian slip usually has a sexual connotation. Here, Freudian slip usually has a sexual connotation.
No, it means when you say one thing because your brain, like, you're trying not to say something, but you say it because your brain is thinking about it.
Right. But that usually
it was like Bush basically
nature,
accidentally admitting.
Freud was sexual in nature. Everything was related to sex.
Anyway, Jesus Christ. Is anyone else's brain in a fucking knot?
We're just goofing. We're just having a time. We're talking fucking motorboats. We're being real fast and loose with fucking war that was terrible.
Yeah. Anyways, I found some other Freudian slips. People sharing their stories online.
Sexual or no?
Some sort of, but not really.
Okay, good.
Blue Macaw said,
as a purist, that's what I want.
This woman in charge of my sister's school-sponsored trip to Mexico very sternly emphasized the importance of acting like mature adults and said she would not allow any student to board the bus without showing her a passport or their birth control. She meant to say birth certificate. Better show me your birth control. Many years ago, Orange Q said, many years ago when I was interviewing for my first job ever after graduating from college, I intended to use the phrase on a pedestal, but somehow I misspoke and said as a pedophile. The embarrassing part is that I did not catch my mistake and kept on talking. Somebody eventually was like, excuse me, can we circle back? What did you mean by that? And that's when they realized they said it.
And I feel like that's mean. Like, if you clearly know that she's not going to go up there and be like, hey, I'm a pedophile. Like, if you just got to ignore it and just let her live.
This one made me laugh out loud. Morley Dote said, 7th grade biology class, I answered a question about what the building blocks for DNA were. I stood up and answered amino assholes instead of amino acids. Amino assholes. Ran a pack.
Real indignant.
Yeah, it's amino assholes.
Fucking dicks. How dare you? And also the ribosome is the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah, of course. Random Pack said, I ended a voicemail to my crush with, okay, if you get a call, give me a chance. Instead of Give me a call if you get a chance. If you get a call, give me a chance.
And if that was back in the day on the actual machine and the whole family was going to hear it, like really, we joke about it. But leaving a message for your crush on a machine is braver than the U.S. Marines, without question.
God. Oh, remember your heart used to race? People don't remember. These young kids out there.
When somebody's dad would answer the phone, I was always fine if the mom did, because moms were always kind to me. But dads, terrified. If I called Betty Jo's house and her dad answered the phone, I'm hanging up right away.
Yeah, forget it. Oh, heart pounding. I used to write out little notes. Like, here's my talking points. Don't screw it up. 5th grade Kate. How
long was your cord on your phone?
Super long. We had an old rotary phone, man.
Oh, damn.
We would go clear down the hallway and around the bend. Damn. Anyway, Aaron Tintin 24 said, I once accidentally read Gentiles as genitals at Sunday school.
That's a classic.
Grammar said, during our fraternity initiation one week, the other pledges called the brother in charge dad.
I like how you did a little protection of the listener there, because the actual user's name was Grammar Nazi, but Kate skipped over that.
Just so the topics have been too rough to read about Nazis.
Keep that PG. We don't include that.
Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Love that censor.
As soon as I did it, I was like, I know, chaps, that son of a is about to call me out. Finally,
I wasn't gonna look. I was like, Grammar, that's a weird fucking Reddit username. Grammar Nazi, however, makes a lot more sense.
Some of these other ones were just word slips. This one's definitely like a Freudian slip. Dreams in Red said, I was in a bar and a woman with very bad teeth smiled at me and complimented my boots. I replied, thank you, I love them, they keep my teeth dry. Yeah, that's a shame. That's where the person saying it to you is like, oh.
Yeah. You just want to fucking kill yourself.
Yeah. Yep, that's a smile killer right there.
Like when you know that something's fucked up and somebody says something about it, and you just really hope that nobody ever notices it. It's the worst. I'm watching this show, 90 Day Fiance, where they come in from different countries. One woman met a man in China, and he was originally from, I believe it was Gambia. And he came over to Kansas to meet up with her. They hadn't seen each other for 2 years since the pandemic. She got pregnant with his baby, had the baby. The first thing he says to her when she gets off the plane, well, our relationship has never been about looks. Even though she's gained a lot of weight, I still think we're going to be fine. And her face just immediately sinks in. And I was like, this is horrifying, but also delicious. Like, it was just.
Well, other cultures, like in China, they are just like, you're fat. Like people just point shit out, and like, it's a different culture. It's a different vibe. So I don't know. But anyway.
What were we talking about? Why did I bring that up?
I don't know. Thanks for describing to everyone what 90 Day Fiance was. People come from all over the world. It's a thing.
I don't remember what I was talking about.
Dude, me neither, honestly. I don't know.
So stupid.
I don't know. Okay.
Oh, keep my teeth dry.
Oh, looks. We're talking about looks.
Yeah, when you're nervous. That's exactly right, Kate.
Right.
So for me, there was a time where when we first moved to San Antonio, I had no idea that you needed to get a water softener because the water is here so hard. It can make your skin like really dry out. So when I first moved here, I had dandruff out of control when I was at work, and I had to go in and wear like alphas, which is, for those that are not in the Marine Corps, it's the dark green suit looking uniform.
If you got dandruff.
Yeah. And it's almost black. Like, it's such a dark green. And I come in and I was like, fuck, man, I'm so nervous. I oiled my head up after it. Like, I didn't know what to do. And then I go in, the new commanding officer was there who had just like taken over command. And he goes, God damn, Staff Sergeant, you got a lot of dandruff. Like, there's like 4 or 5 other Marines around. And I was like, thanks, sir. Appreciate it. And I was in my mind, like, if I wasn't in a Marine uniform, I would have cried right there. I was just like, why would you do that? I understand I got dandruff. You don't got to tell me.
Yep.
I know.
Our drill instructors making one of our gals get rid of her mustache was brutal. Yeah. They didn't mince words.
What'd they say? You got a mustache?
Yep. And we're going to get rid of it right now. Oh, otherwise we'll send you over to 3rd Battalion. Okay. So anyway.
I mean, I would take that over the time where they told the kid that show him his dick. Because he had a little penis that was hidden behind his pubes.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to round number 3.
Okay. We are cruising along.
Smashing this episode.
Totally. Round number 3.
That's right.
Pelotons. Do you remember? I feel like during the height of COVID, everybody and their mom was getting these Peloton bikes. I know half the people we work with got one. You couldn't leave your apartment. It was one of the only ways really to exercise. Our producer Nick got one for his wife. And I think they made a Christmas ad out of it. It was her big Christmas present from him. People were outraged. That's a niche reference there. Anyways, everybody got one for the most part, but I didn't realize like they're expensive as shit. One, the bike itself is expensive. The
like $2,500. Yeah.
Like everything about $3,300, Nick is saying. And then on top of that, you have to pay a bunch every month.
$40 a month.
$40 a month.
To collect dust in my house. That's
for most people, it has become like a coat rack. Like I see people joking like, well, I love my new coat hanger, and it's their Peloton. So anyway, these things got super hot during COVID. And now there's been news stories about how the company, it was blowing up. They were hiring a ton of people. Now they're having huge layoffs now that people are back outdoors and like whatever. People aren't using them anymore. People aren't buying them anymore. People aren't getting the classes anymore. So it's kind of falling apart. So anyway, this is from The Hill. House staff members will not get Peloton fitness memberships as perks after all. The chief admin officer of the House is backing out of a planned deal with Peloton to provide staff and Capitol Police officers with Peloton All Access and Peloton app memberships through its Center for Wellbeing.
Now, let me say this. I wish that the Capitol Police folks could get it because of the things that they're having to deal with on a daily basis and all those fucking crazies trying to protest everything in the world. They deserve to have a little bit of a Peloton perk.
That I'll agree with. But still, that's, if you look at the number, that's an enormous amount of people getting Pelotons. It's not happening. Representative Tim Ryan of Ohio, who spearheaded the creation of the center in 2018, told The Hill when asked about planned Peloton benefit. You think Planned Parenthood's a hot topic right now. Planned Peloton, buddy, is the real toasty one. Yeah, a draft memo obtained by The Hill that was expected to be distributed to staff last week said the House Center for Wellbeing would provide app memberships at no monthly cost starting Wednesday, but the email announcing the benefit never went out. There was a purchase order made prior to the committee being briefed, and then the committee last week directed the chief officer to terminate the agreement. Can you imagine?
I'm still thinking about keeping my teeth dry.
Keep those teeth dry. Yeah, I wish I could see that moment. That's only what happened to us.
Because he's just like...
Picture this for a second, though.
Okay.
You work for Peloton.
Right.
The company is fucking spiraling. They need a win. You are a sales rep in DC. You make the right connections, and somehow you make a deal to get everybody on Capitol Hill, including the Capitol Police, senators, congresspeople, Capitol Police. Everybody's getting a Peloton. You get a Peloton. You get a Peloton. You get a Peloton. Everybody's getting one. You are taking you tell your bosses this. It's everybody's partying. Your guys are like Jordan Belfort. You're blowing lines. You're going crazy. Okay. You're on a cruise ship with your mistress or mistress, fella. Next thing you know, you get a call. Canceled. Whole order canceled. That has to suck. So let's just have a moment for that Peloton sales rep. Anyways, Republicans had sharply criticized Democrats for planning to use taxpayer funds to offer memberships for a luxury brand, even if it did not include Peloton's expensive stationary bikes. The speaker may not be worried about this costly new program, but American families should sweat it. It comes as families are getting crushed by the worst inflation in 40 years, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy said on the House floor Wednesday. It is insane. I have to agree. It is also redundant. Members and staff already have access to the congressional gym for a membership fee. The Peloton perk does not replace it. Instead, it duplicates it. I'd like to see any Democrat go to their district, my district, anyone else's district, and defend this, he said. Very fair point.
I mean, when they're right, they're right.
They're right. You do, in fact, got to give it to them.
You do.
I got to say.
You do.
You do. Fox Business reported that the contract cost would be $10,000 plus $10 per month for each staff member who signs up.
How? Like that's, to me, that's like, how did they negotiate something that's 3 times the cost of what somebody who's not buying it in bulk?
Because that's fucking politics,
right?
Man.
That's government stuff.
That's like government, of course. That only they could come up with a way, figure out the chemistry to make that happen. That would mean a cost of more than $100,000 per year, depending on how many people sign up. Individual members for the public are $12.99 a month for the app, or $39 a month for the all access membership that can be used.
How do they not? Why can't Congress get a promo code?
Hello, Peleton, if you're listening, we'll do some ads for you. You want to send me a Peleton? Anyway, Ryan.
They can send one. I'll never ride it. That's a promise. I got a bike upstairs, and we have the app and all that stuff. Just not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I like to be moving with the wind in my hair. You know.
Yeah.
Ryan is chairman of the House Appropriations Subcommittee on the legislative branch and has written a book about mindfulness and meditation. The Peleton app membership did not appear to fit in with his ideas of wellness promotion from the center that he helped to start. We're not going to do that. We're very worried about the high pressure situations people are in, storming the Capitol, mental health promotion, Ryan said, just trying to offer to some extent what a lot of businesses offer to keep people here. But we're not going to go down that road. So a little bit of mistake goofing there. My bad with the Peleton, everybody.
Made a mistake. 10 grand per member might be a little bit much, but you could pick a group to do a spin class with from Capitol Hill. Who you throwing in that class with you? Or they could be retired and they have to lead the class. Who would you go and lead a class?
Politicians wise, Arnold Schwarzenegger is leading the class.
Oh yeah. But
I would just love to see that body
though.
on a Peleton.
I bet it would be hard.
I know. Exactly. Because who's sitting next to me? Boehner. John Boehner and I are both ripping heaters during the class. We're goofing. We're drinking cigarettes. We got Chianti in our water bottles. We don't give a fuck.
I'm in the back eating spaghetti.
Who's next to us? Mitch McConnell.
Oh, yeah. The old turtle man himself.
Struggle busted. Nancy Pelosi, she's got makeup streaking down her face. She is falling apart, man. The whole gang.
Duncan Hunter's in there absolutely ripping vapes.
Oh, he's just vaping the whole time. He's got brought his rabbit with
and
him.
Stuff as an attendant.
Yeah, exactly. This brings up a good point. This Peleton thing's even more absurd. I looked it up. What do you think is the average age of Capitol Hill?
The average age of like a actual congressperson?
Of Congress and senators combined.
I would say probably 65, 70.
Oh, it's better than you thought. 57.6. That was what the 116th Congress was. We're in the 117th now. But anyway, I'm not saying olds can't exercise, but that's a lot of old balls hanging over seats.
It really is.
That's a lot of old balls.
Imagine the amount of power that it takes to have one of those little hand dryers when McConnell's grabbing up his fucking nuts like a couple of baby squirrels and putting them in front of there to dry them off.
You got to get a special seat for your ladybugs. That's a whole other thing.
Exactly right.
Whatever. Anyway, I just thought that was a quirky little, wacky little story that was going under the radar. So no Pelotons for them.
Figured that one out. All right, let's move on to round number 4. Now in Zero Block 30, we're privileged to have back who would now be my congressman. I moved since the last time he was on the show. He would have missed the cut last time, but this time he would have been my congressman in the Texas 23rd. We talked to him last time about his exploits in the CIA and the things that he did in India and Pakistan and Afghanistan. But this time we're bringing him back because he wrote a book. And I have been listening to different podcasts with you on it, Will. And dude, you have been doing a lot of podcasts lately. So I wanted to try to get some questions that you haven't really talked about from a different perspective. You have a new book out and it's called American Rebook, an idealist guide to getting big things done. And the first question, you are absolutely right that it's idealist. And I make fun of my co-host Connor quite often because he comes off as an idealist a lot of times too, like very pick yourself up by the bootstraps, American dream type of guy. He was a quarterback at West Point. You kind of expect that thing. But where does the line draw for you? Or how do you keep focus on this idealist nature when the evidence that's around you all over the country is not idealist at all.
Sure. Look, and I appreciate it, man. It's good. It's good to be back with you. I appreciate your perspective, and I'm doing a lot of podcasts because it's the future, right? And so, and I love the ability to have longer conversations. And so my philosophy, and I talk about it in the book, is actually pragmatic idealism, right? And idealism for me is about doing the greatest, most you can for the most number of people, doing the best you can for the most number of people. And the pragmatic piece is based on the realities right now, right? And so that's how I articulate this. And this has literally been my governing, has been my governing philosophy since I was in college. To be frank. And so, but here is my perspective. Nobody thought a Black kid at Texas A&M University could become student body president when Black folks only made 3% of the population at A&M. Nobody thought that I was going to be able to be successful when I was in the CIA. Nobody thought a Black Republican was going to be able to win a congressional seat in a district that was 71% Latino, right? And so those are, people have always said this, it's impossible, but here's what I learned representing the 23rd, which was 29 counties, 2 time zones, 820 miles of the border. It took 10 and a half hours to drive across it at 80 miles an hour, which was the speed limit in most of the district. And way more unites us than divides us. That seems so counterintuitive. It seems so counterintuitive, and I appreciate that. But because that's not what's reflected on social media or cable news. But when you actually talk to people, you get a different perspective. And so that's what has forged my opinions. Oh, and by the way, I won in blue waves. I won when people, every time I won, there was always some opposition of why I shouldn't have won. And so that's how I've come to these conclusions. And by the way, we got to do something different. Nobody thinks the trajectory that we're on is good. Neither party or independents or people that don't vote, nobody's like, shit's good right now. Let's we're okay. Mm-hmm. Now, 72% of Americans think the country is on the wrong track. So for me, the line, we got to articulate a vision of where we want to go. And then we have to be realistic about how we get there based on our starting point. And that's where we are right now.
And I think it's remarkable to hear somebody like you talk about how we can do it, because you have done it, and being not just a Republican, but a Black Republican leading that district that's 70% Latino. I feel like you've had to reach across the aisle a lot more than most politicians who won several re-elections, because as you know, a majority of elections are won in the primary for the majority of the United States. And so you really are taking those sound bites that we're seeing on TV. And that is what's running the country. Like these crazy culture wars, the cancel culture on both sides of the aisle. But there seems to be something for me that not a lot of people are talking about that I wanted to talk to you about. And that's the erosion of American liberty over the years. And it feels to me like whenever we watch politicians in DC, and not just DC, but even here in Austin, we are looking at politics through this lens of what we don't want the other party to do. And everything is about restrictions, whether it's restrictions through medical, restrictions through taxes. It's a restrictive policy on either one of the sides. It's never about how do we gain more liberty. And the American rankings across the globe have really dropped in the last 30 or 40 years, where we used to be in the top 3 or 4. Now Heritage Foundation, which is a very conservative group, has us at 25, number 25 in the world as far as the Freedom Index. And that's not something that Americans are taught. That's not something that we think about. For somebody like you that's so pragmatic and wants to do the right thing and reach across the aisle, how do we start to focus in on individual liberties and truly mean it?
Sure. Look, brother, I agree with everything you just said and your pretense. And usually when I'm starting conversation, I'm like, well, I'm respectfully disagree with kind of your setup. But you're right. Freedoms have been decreasing. And then also a democracy around the world is in peril. as well too. And that trend is being driven by this freedom trend that you're talking about. So it starts with ideological consistency. Concentration of power in the hands of the few is always a bad thing. Far left wants to concentrate power within the federal government. Far right wants to concentrate power in an individual, right? And so the political continuum is no longer a line, it's a horseshoe, and the edges are closer to each other rather than they are to the middle. And so you also have to believe, if you believe in separation of powers and that local control, then you need to be pushing and not trying to usurp that local control when local control is doing something you don't like. I'm reading a book right now. I think the title is Nazis in Skokie. It's about how the ACLU defended Nazis for protesting in this town in Wisconsin, and they're ultimately saying, "Hey, you need to protect freedoms even when people are using those freedoms that you don't like." Right? So why is this happening? This is happening because you pointed to the problem. Most decisions are being decided in primaries. You know, I go into the math in my book where in 2020 and 2018, 92% of House seats were decided in the primary. And in 2018, the last non-presidential election year, the average contested primary had 54,000 voters. That means 26,501 people decided 92% of the people that are going into the House. That's like 2% of the population. Let's look at our state of Texas.
And I think it's even more, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think it's even more important there that it's not even the people who are deciding who these primary candidates are. It's huge PACs. It's people with an enormous amount of donors. They're picking and choosing where they go. I mean, we see it with like J.D. Vance. It's in Ohio, never really lived in Ohio. You have politicians who are Dr. Oz and Pennsylvania, who only lived there when he was going into college. You're having PACs and political action committees that are putting these people in the position to win in already decided races.
Sure. And so Chaz, let me be specific. Your argument, you're talking about super PACs that are doing it.
Yes.
You know, there's a difference because PACs are like, you know, companies that people that live locally that give, and they can only give a small amount of, they can only give the same amount that an individual can give. But it's some of these super PACs that the people that are running them are making millions of dollars and on to be able to do that. And so you're right, but they're still talking to a handful of voters because historically the professional political class tells you only talk to likely, you know, whether it's Republican primary voters or Democratic primary voters. So if we're talking to the same people, we get the same results. Now, when you look at the number of people that, let's take a conservative district, the number of people that are conservative, that are reliably conservative, that vote in general elections, but don't vote in primaries is greater than or equal to the total number of people that vote in primaries. So we need to get more people voting in primaries. That means we need to talk to different kinds of people. And so Texas is the example. We had primary elections on March 1st. 3 million people voted. That's 1.2 million Democrats, 1.8 million Republicans out of 30 million. Yes. That's terrible. No. And we're in runoffs right now, starting on what's today, March 16th. The elections in a couple of, May 16th, excuse me. And you're going to have even less than that are voting. And
I saw here my school district had a bond voting, and it's one of the biggest school districts in Texas. And I think 740 people voted, and it was like $100 million bond package. Like that's a lot of money for people to look at, and only less than like 1,000 people voted in this election.
Sure. And so I've gotten into debates with people about why are those folks not voting? Some would say, well, hey, they don't think these things matter and they're happy with their state of where they are. And there's probably some of that. What percentage that is, I don't know. But there's also people that are just sick and tired and don't believe in what either side is doing. And so they're frustrated. And it's driven by national leaders that are more interested in fear mongering rather than inspiring. Mm-hmm. We want to be inspired. We want to believe in something larger than ourselves. That's an opportunity. But why is it not happening? Because it's hard. All those groups you talk about, look, I think the total number, when all of my elections, if you add up all the money that was spent, I think it's like $65-70 million, right? That is crazy. That is crazy.
It really is.
For a House seat, right? And so this is a lot of money going in there. However, it requires a discipline to try to talk to those people. And that's how I always won, right? When I won, I still had in primaries, people were against me. Look, Ted Cruz had endorsed my opponent. This was at the height of Ted Cruz's power. The Tea Party people were supportive in endorsing my opponent. Nobody thought I had a chance. But I got different kinds of voters to come in and vote in the primary that had never voted before. That was the secret. That was the success. And that is what is going to what we're going to require to get out of this morass that we're in right now. And if we want to change the kinds of people that are making our decisions, then we have to improve the kinds of people that are voting that we're sending to Austin or Washington or you name the capital.
And the kind of people that we pick. One thing that you've talked about in other spots is the idea that the next presidential election cycle, we could have two people that are damn near or in their 80s that are running. And neither one of them, like President Biden, obviously is not an affluent speaker at this point in his career. And I joked about that in the State of the Union, they had to have given him a B12 shot because the first 15 minutes he was good. And then after that, it was time to take a nap. President Trump is not going to be confused by doing the Lincoln Douglas debates anytime soon. He's not that type of orator either. So is there anyone now like that you're looking at, we'll leave yourself out of the situation, who in politics right now do you feel is inspiring that you could point to people and say, look, I understand that we don't have a lot going on with President Biden, and even Vice President Harris doesn't give you a lot of warm fuzzies, but look at these people, maybe somebody from both sides of the aisle. Who do you look at as inspiring?
So look, who do I find? There's a lot of people I like, right? Like I like what Governor Ducey in Arizona is doing. I like Larry Hogan in Maryland. I like Charlie Baker in Massachusetts. I love John Katko, my fellow colleague from New York. I love, those are some Republicans I love. I think people and I think people to watch on the Democratic side, you got to look at someone like a Stacey Abrams in Georgia. Mm-hmm. Now, her race is going to be even tougher than it was before, but she has shown, I think her organization is one of the key people responsible for the Warnock and John Ossoff victories in those runoffs in Georgia. Also, I think President Trump helped the Democrats win last cycle in Georgia as well because of his antics. But I think that's someone in the House. I love a guy like Pete Aguilar, right? Pete Aguilar is a thoughtful, smart guy who's working hard. He's not crazy on social media. These are some of the people. But when it comes to 24, thinking about who that's going to be now is a fool's errand, because I always use the example, and this is not me being disrespectful at all, but a couple of cycles ago, the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker, everybody was talking about him being the man, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw where that went. Everybody thought, Governor Bush, Jeb Bush from Florida, was a juggernaut with 150 million plus. We saw how that went. And so
Howard Dean until he screamed.
yeah. Everybody loves these conversations now, but we're getting ready. We haven't even finished 2022. And Republicans are going to take back the House, period, full stop. Mm-hmm. Likely to take back the Senate. However, we're going to learn the wrong lesson. The other day, I think it was Elon Musk tweeted out, he said, President Biden forgot that he didn't get a mandate. The country just wanted something a little, everybody wanted to take a breath, wanted to exhale, right? The Democrats weren't given a mandate, and President Biden had zero coattails, right? Democrats lost seats that they were unexpected to lose. And the lesson from 2020 was don't be a jerk and don't be a socialist. In 22, Republicans are going to take it as the country loves us. No. The country doesn't love us. The country thinks the other side's incompetent. And if we don't get anything done, then all the problems that we're dealing with are going to be blamed on Republicans. The inflation and the recession that's likely to come because of that is not going away in 2023. And so if we don't do things, then the pendulum is going to swing again. And so 24, in my opinion, I always go back to Bill Clinton, and that was a different age. When Bill Clinton got elected, social media wasn't a thing. He announced, I think, 3 months before the first primary. It's crazy. Like, can you imagine cycle that only started 3 months?
It would be awesome. I mean, one of my friends here was out to eat with him. He's from India, and he was telling me that in India, they bring out all their political ads 2 or 3 weeks before the election.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's against the law for them to be talking in public, you elect them to go do what they're supposed to do. You look at it whenever their term's almost over and decide, did they do it or not? I mean, if we did that here, just take a 6 months break, like not do it forever. Sure. Just let America just take us. You don't have to turn the stove off. Just take us off the burner and put us on the simmering pot for a little while. And it feels like that's what politics needs, is just to unplug America and plug it back in, because there is so many issues that are seemingly, like you said, 70% of America wants the same type of thing. You want a stable paycheck. You want to be able to have access to food. You want decent gas prices to get you from point A to B. Like that's what you talk about, those 3 or 4 issues. And that's a majority of American households and what they care about. The things that they don't care about is what we're focusing on more and more and more. And you just want to rip your hair out. Like it's like, we're finally out of this stage of war. Let's move on to some actual American reconstruction that we really need.
Sure. No, Chaps, you're right. And so, but this is where cable news and Twitter is not reflective of all of society. And you led the show up with talking about, I've been doing a lot of podcasts. I've been doing a lot of podcasts because it's funny. At the same time, people are saying Americans' attention spans are getting shorter. However, more people are listening to podcasts, long form conversation, right? All of these things are getting true. Now, why is the attention span decreasing? Because there's a number of options. And why we haven't been able to cut through the noise, I think it's going to require that there's not going to be there's this notion that there's this one, narrative. What's trending on Twitter is not reflective of what Americans care about on a particular day. And I used to laugh. I would always do these DC to DQs when I was in Congress. Every summer, I would do about 35 town halls in 5 days, and I always do them at Dairy Queen. And national reporters would always want to come with me because they saw my district as a bellwether of the rest of the country. And I would tell the reporters, like, listen, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to do my thing. And then I'm going to give you 10, 15 minutes at the end, and you can do whatever you want. You could ask questions. And what would always happen, these reporters would be like, how come y'all didn't ask this or ask questions about this? And why didn't you care and ask the congressman about this particular thing? And finally, this one lady raises her hand because she's like, because we don't give a shit, and these reporters couldn't fathom that somebody living in West Texas was more interested in why their road was crummy and why their kid's school didn't have access to a computer science class, or why, as a veteran, it was so hard to get an appointment when into the VA. These are the kinds of questions that I got all the time. And talking about those is important. But again, go back to our professional political class is geared to talking to other folks. And so that's, my solution. We got to get more people voting in primaries.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I want to transition a little bit to some foreign policy stuff because being a part of the CIA and all the things that you did in Congress right now, one of the biggest issues, obviously, on the globe is what's happening in Ukraine with Russia. Do you think that what we've done and managed to do basically in a proxy war at this point with Russia is the biggest intel win that we've had in the last 20 years?
Ooh, the biggest intel win of the last 20 years. I'm trying to think of what else, how I would.
There hasn't been a lot of wins. I guess it looked so much better on the back of how we left Afghanistan. It looked so much better. There was big strategic mistakes along the way in Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria. And this one, it feels like we warned Ukraine in time. We're giving them the intel, killed 20 of their generals, of Russia's generals. It feels like this was the first win that we've had in a long time. That we see.
I don't, the successes are all good. There's no question about this. But I think the frame you're using minimizes the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
And again, you're putting me in an awkward situation because I'm about to criticize my community. A lot of people, and let me rephrase that. We always talk about intelligence failures. Usually it's a failure to interpret the intelligence to advocate for policy, right? And coming out of the intelligence community and being connected to it for over 20 years, the intelligence community collects information to inform policymakers, and policymakers make a decision on that. And so a lot of people thought that the Ukrainian war was going to be over in 3 days. So leading up to it, I think there was, and part of that was hedging bets because the Afghanistan withdrawal was so disastrous, right? So I think what's happening, our support to Ukraine is good. I think the information we're sharing is proper. I think the execution on top of that is better because the Ukrainians have executed, better than we expected. And I was always reminding people, the Russians tried to go to Kyiv in 2014 and they failed. And so now the Ukrainians have better weapons, better prepared, better organized in order to deal with that. But we're not out of the woods yet. And so I would say I have been surprised with Europe's advocacy for Ukraine. Some of the commitments that they have made have not come through. A lot of people are getting frustrated with the Germans. I'm on the German Marshall Fund, so looking at the transatlantic relationship between us and Europe. Some Europeans are starting to get frustrated with the Germans not following through on things. But the fact that the Germans said they were going to do stuff was pretty important. So to your initial question, yes, the support that we're helping the Ukrainians is great. But guess what? We have to be committed to this for the long term, because the longer this conflict goes, the better it benefits Vladimir Putin, because our Eastern European countries and allies are not going to be able to handle dealing with a population that is living under the threat of war. The closer you are to Russia, the more impacted you are by secondary sanctions. Oh, and by the way, the humanitarian crisis that is happening by Ukrainians leaving and relocating in Slovenia and Poland, but also Belarusians, right? And so these countries having to deal with those things is going to put pressures on their society, which could make them start looking a little bit more like Hungary. And so yes, there's been successes. We got to make sure we double down, give the Ukrainians everything they can. I have found this latest narrative coming out of Europe that people are afraid of Ukraine winning. What the heck are you like? Ukraine winning is a good thing, right?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Who cares about Russian humiliation? Maybe that would change. That's what they need in order to change their ways. So yeah. So there is a lot of good success stories coming out of what's happening in Ukraine, but it's not over.
See, and that's the difference between somebody like me who oversimplifies things and people who actually have answers that are intelligent and work in that industry and not just run their fucking mouth on a podcast.
Look, man, you're directionally in the right direction. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I just took my Marine Corps. Like, I just got to lead the right people to the right spot, and they're going to do everything whenever we actually get there. Speaking of the right spot, you were the congressman for the Texas 23rd, which is the biggest border district in America, 800 miles. What would you, let's say 2024 things fall exactly how lots of people would want them, and you're President Hurd, your executive plan for what's going on at the border, what do you install?
Stop treating everybody like they're an asylum seeker. Start with that. And here's the reality. This was a policy that was started under the previous Trump administration.
And I've heard you say that same line a few times. For our listeners that don't maybe not listen to like Intelligence Matters, what does that mean when you stop treating people like an asylum seeker?
So asylum means you a part of a protected class. And that's identified, usually it's something about race, sexual identity, it's a protected class. Those are outlined. And your government is persecuting you because you're a member of that protected class. Or your government is not defending you from somebody who's persecuting you because you're part of that protected class. That is what asylum is. And so what happens is when somebody comes to the border, they claim credible fear. This is how it's articulated, that I'm seeking asylum because I'm part of a persecuted class. And you have the ability, that Border Patrol agent has the ability to, on the ground, make the decision whether that credible fear is credible or not. The policy that started under the last administration was treat anybody who says they have credible fear as an asylum seeker. So that means everybody is saying they're seeking asylum. And that's why, and then that starts an immigration clock. That is what is that is pulling people coming illegally because they know, hey, say this thing and we're going to get in, and it's going to take 2 years in order for your immigration hearing to have. And when people actually show up, only 20, historically, I think this is an average over 30 years, only 20% of people that have actually claimed asylum get asylum.
Wow.
So that's what's happening. So everybody's talking about Title 42. Title 42 was using COVID as an excuse to deport people. Border Patrol has the legal authority to not accept these asylum seekers. Let me give another example. And sorry, I'm getting to the weeds on this, Chad.
No, I think it's good.
So when I was in the CIA, one of my day jobs was stamping visas. Somebody would come in the consular section. I want to go to America. Why you want to go to America? I want to go see Disneyland. Where's Disneyland? It's in Milwaukee. You're denied. Okay. So the number of visas that are actually denied when people come in, because that consular officer has the ultimate authority to evaluate the issue on the ground and make that decision. Like consular rejections are north of 80%, if not higher. And again, that's an old number. That was from my time when I was in, which was a while ago. So Border Patrol needs to start acting that way, which means we're basically going to start deporting more people because people that actually require asylum are being affected by this. And we're going to see this. These are Joe Biden's DHS's own numbers. That there's a possibility of getting to where you're having 400,000 people a month coming into the country illegally. Donald Trump, in his first year in office, only deported 200,000 people for the whole year.
Yeah.
Right? It's a crazy number. So stop treating everybody as an asylum seeker. That would be step one. Step two, guess what? It's hard to get from Tegucigalpa to El Paso. There is an infrastructure that has been established from somebody taking money. So first starts off with, hey, I want to leave Tegu and come to America. You got to find how to connect to someone who's going to move you. You got to exchange money. You got to show up at point A to catch a bus to get you to the next stop. You got to stay overnight in a safe house. And then there is infrastructure that we know about. Border Patrol is doing a very good job of collecting all of this information. but we're not doing anything to dismantle it. And that is the responsibility is Homeland Security Investigations. It's called HSI. Not many people know about it. They don't have enough resources. And this is where we should have the broader intelligence community more focused on dealing with this issue. Oh, and by the way, not only dismantling human smuggling, but narcotraficantes at the same time. Drug overdoses, the highest it's ever been this past year. Right, a lot of that is fentanyl. A lot of that is coming over our southern border. So that's step 2 that I would do in order to address the pull functions. 3, I would come up with a economic national security plan. And there's one specifically for the Northern Triangle. Historically, the Northern Triangle, Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, is driven 80% of illegal traffic to the United States. Now, that number is completely off now because everybody in the world is like, doors are open, let's go. And so you're seeing I think it's north of 100 different countries, nationals that are coming to the country illegally. But the Northern Triangle historically has been a problem. And so you need to deal with the economic issues that are driving abject poverty, lack of economic opportunity, and violence in those countries and because it is a fraction of the cost to solve the problem there before it gets to our shores. That would be point 3. Point 4, double the number of judges there are dealing with immigration cases so that we can get a backlog on that. You can do those things fairly quickly in parallel, and that will drive, and then make sure we have the smart wall, the technology that is used to understand, get operational control of our border, meaning we know everything that's coming back and forth across it. And by the way, let's streamline legal immigration because every industry needs workers. And so we should be able
and it's impossible. Like if those numbers are accurate, it's 400,000 a month. Like once you're done with 4 years of Biden and those numbers remain the same, it is impossible to get to deport people, even if you wanted to. Yeah. We have to find a humane way, like once people are here, to treat people humanely. And I think that is, for me, that's the crux of the immigration issue. Like I understand that there's definitely economic and there's security issues and all those things involved. But so many of the people, especially the children that are coming over, the younger family members, they're here because their parents came. What do we do then? Like, I feel like and you say return back to some of the, I guess, to make government work. I've talked a lot lately about a return to decency, and it feels like that we have lost that. And I'm not just talking name calling, things like that, but just policy in general. It feels like a lot of times the cruelty is the point a lot of times.
Look, you know what? I unfortunately, I can't push back hard on you on that statement, right? You're going to deny kids the opportunity to have an education, even if they're here, through no fault of their own.
Or fucking baby formula, like
yeah, it's just I would agree with you. The issue, we've lost decency, and it starts with doing the right thing, right? And so that is, and how you change that only changes by us as individuals, 1, modeling the behavior we want to see, and 2, demanding that behavior in the people that are representing us at different levels of government. And if you live in a city and you only, again, city elections here in Texas last week, some places, you were saying earlier, only a couple hundred people voted. In cities with 10,000 people or so. That's not good. And so you're only going to have this negativity. And I will relate this back to when did America become a superpower, and when did we become an exceptional nation? Of all the superpowers, we can go all the way back to Rome. Of all the superpowers, we became an exceptional nation, not because of what we have taken, but because of what we have given. And that is what being America, and that is what so many countries viewed us as, the lens through which they viewed us. And so when we're representing those core values, the best, that's when we're at our best. And so we need to make sure that's reflective in our policies and how we handle people. And yeah, decency is a great word.
And all those times that you're talking about where people around the world did look at American exceptionalism, most of it happened after times where we passed bipartisan legislation that were related to the life and liberty and personhood of other people.
Sure, chat. Look, here's this. There's a dangerous philosophy that has seeped into our politics, maybe for the last 30 years, that the only way to get things done is through one party rule
and a supermajority.
Yeah, that's the absolute worst way to get anything done. Here's a novel idea. And everybody who's complaining about we need 60 votes in the Senate, guess what? Drop the 10 left-wing nuts that are preventing things and pick up 20 Republicans that are willing to play ball. A
perfect example is when the leak of Roe versus Wade came out, and Democrats come out with this bill that they think is going to codify Roe as federal law. Yeah. And they add things in there that a majority of people don't agree with. And so then it doesn't pass. So then you get fucking nothing done. But the extremes on both sides of the party are like, all right, well, we tried. There's nothing that we could do. No, take a little bit of the heat off and move forward incrementally. It feels like everything in politics has to be a grand slam for your party. Can we just take a couple base hits as a country for a little while?
You're 100% right. And everybody wants to boil things down to a singular issue. There is no issue of any importance that can be boiled down into only one singular problem, which means that you got to have a complicated solution or a multivariate solution to that problem. And that is part of the problem. And it's this notion that when any piece of legislation that you and I know by name, Civil Rights Act 64, Voting Rights Act of 65, recent stuff like the First Step Act, Every Student Succeeds Act, Clean Water Act, all of these things were done when one party controlled the Senate and another party controlled the House. That is the only way to actually get big things done. And those things were created because they started with, let's solve this one thing. Well, if we're going to do that one thing, that requires these two other things, and build these solutions by using addition. Meaning you start with one thing and then, hey, that one thing actually turned out to be, we got to do these 8 things. Great. We started with 1, we got 8. But the way Congress works now is through subtraction. I want these 100 things. And then they get whittled down to like 14. And then you feel like, wait, we just lost like 80 things that we thought we were going to get done. So nobody ever feels like there's a victory. So you're 100% right. And part of the structurally, part of the problem in Washington, D.C. is that concentration of power in leadership, meaning the speaker and the majority leader. 30 years ago, committee chairs drafted legislation, and they were more, they focused more on making sure all of their members were happy with the legislation than worrying about what their party thought. And that's how we were able to get some of these things done. Now, Republicans and Democrats do it where leadership, the minority leader, or if you're in the majority, the speaker and the majority leader, their offices are the ones that drive all legislation. And so that means they're more focused on their party rather than solving problems.
Do you think, last thing I'll ask you, do you think this problem that you're addressing and wanting to go back to more bipartisanship and more decency amongst the both parties and actually get things done, is that realistically achievable in a 5-year window?
Yes. But guess what? It's going to get worse before it gets better. And to do it, it's going to be hard. And I hope that there is not some external crisis that is so bad that shocks the system to make us get there, because we can make these decisions now. And it starts with us recognizing that, the moving more people into a primary to get more thoughtful candidates only requires a couple thousand people, per congressional district. So that's the hard work that needs to be done. And it requires us to have a vision. And it starts with, and you've probably heard me say this before, Chaps, why do we call this country an experiment, the experiment called America. We call it an experiment because nobody thought it was going to work.
Democracies don't stick around for longer than 100 years, typically.
100%. The next democracy after us was Switzerland, and it was 60 years later. There are only 14 countries that have been a democracy for more than 100 years. Democracy is fragile. It always has been fragile. It always will be fragile. And it's hard, but it requires a public that understands and appreciates these values. And guess what? We can't take it for granted. We live in the greatest country that has ever been on this planet. Because of those ideals, we have to fight for them. And that requires us to not just vote in general elections. It requires us to get involved in primaries. It requires us as individuals to model the behavior that we want to see. And it requires all of us to do something that my dad always told me to do, have a PMA, a positive mental attitude. And
very Marine term too. That's what we do on the rifle range.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to tell my dad that. I'm like, Dad, did you get that?
It's the first thing that you have to write in your book when you're going to shoot is PMA. Because if you miss the first shot, you got to be back in the, I'm going to nail the second one.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man.
And I think the last thing that I'll say in regards to that, I love the idea of having America as the best country. Like, as the reason why, like, growing up in the South, growing up in a military family, joining the Marine Corps, getting shot for my country, I truly believe that America is the greatest country in the world. However, I don't believe that term is something that we own. I think it's something that we rent, and we have got to prove that we are making our good on the lease that we've gotten on liberty and democracy in the world. And if we don't, we're going to get fucking kicked out, just like you would if you don't pay your bills. Like we've got to do better.
Look, chaps, and this is, I get into this in detail in the book. This is not about us just being our best selves. This is about us being involved in a new Cold War with the Chinese government, who is trying to surpass us as the sole global superpower. And they have the capability to do that. And if we don't get our act together, we're going to be looking and being talked about in the same vein as Britons are, after World War II, or how, folks that were in the 18th century, Spain,
the Ottoman Empire doesn't have anybody on the podium at the Olympics.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right. Well, let's get together and have a beer soon. Will, thank you so much for joining us back here on Zero Block 30.
Thanks, brother.
I always like it when I talk to somebody who was in Congress or is in Congress and they clearly know what the fuck they're talking about. It's a little reassuring. It's so surprising when you're like, oh, wow, you actually, you know facts. Like, so hearing him talking about the border crisis here and then talking about Ukraine and things like that, you could just tell that Will knows his shit.
Yeah. And I've said this on the show before, but like, that's why every year when we make our DC trip, it's actually like a great relief to me to sit with people in person and be like, oh, you're sane. Oh, thank God. Oh, wow. It's great talking to you. Like from either side of the fence, like, oh, good. You're not what I see on Twitter all day long. This is much better.
I think it was Ben Sass from Nebraska who made the comment that everything that happens in here would be different if we remove the television cameras, like, and you didn't have people trying to get their little cell phone bites or their little bites for social media. Yeah. Probably completely true. Maybe the most accurate thing that I've heard in a long time considering politics, but I hope Will is right and that there is a return to some decency. The fact that I think the most remarkable stat in politics is that 15% of people vote in primaries. And that's what basically makes the policy, is whoever you pick from the primary process, because you're usually going to win. Like, it's crazy that's how it is.
Yeah. The, what's the name of that show? Late Night with
Bill Maher?
He was on the Daily Show and now he has his own show. Oliver. John Oliver.
Yeah, John Oliver.
John Oliver did this whole episode dedicated to how no one voting in primaries affects the country. It is like the number one thing that affects the country is nobody voting in that affects your daily life more than anything else. Like, comparatively, presidential election doesn't mean shit and nobody's, but yeah.
Oh yeah. Crazy. Your day-to-day life is very rarely affected by the presidential policies, like what the executive branch wants to do, but your local policies, man, man, nobody votes. Just a fact. All right, let's move on to save rounds and alibis, right?
Yeah. Save rounds, alibis.
What do you got, Kate? Nick, what do you got?
Nick.
I'll go. Yeah. Yeah, so just for you guys, just want to let you guys know I contacted the Nonas and I put in a good word for potentially a something special this coming week because I believe we'll be in studio. So I'm working on it. I'm putting in work right now, some recommendations for the crew, and maybe if it's ready by then, we could have it like on screen for the audience to watch.
Hell yeah. That sounds delicious. Wonderful. Send the Nonas my regards.
I will.
Please. For me, one, we have a bunch of our coworkers, like I think like 12 of them or something. They just had to turn in their cell phones this morning, and they are like, I don't even think they could take them with them. Like they have to leave them behind in the car or whatever. They're getting put in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania's Pocono Mountains for an entire week. I thought it was just the weekend. They're like, no, we're gone for like the entire week for a survival show hosted by Roan. A little part of me is afraid someone's going to die. And I guess I just wanted to get ahead of it and say that in case it happens. And then we can look back and be like, Kate said it.
Wow, Kate was right. Yeah.
That'll be a social clip we can use.
And I'll go one step further. I don't feel like anyone's going to die.
Okay, good. Phew. Okay. I don't think but yeah, no, of course not.
No.
But I do feel a little and then this story, big news story just came out this week about the ticks in Pennsylvania, like going crazy this fucking stuff. So I just hope they're all safe. Check each other. The moral of this story, everybody, I'd like to check you for ticks.
Yeah, we might as well update the safety brief. Tick
check
season
your
is
buddies
in full
for ticks.
season. Listen, check that buddy next to you and your left and right lateral limits. Just make sure they don't got any ladybugs crawling up in their butt crack.
Yeah, consent. With consent, check for ticks. But check for ticks, my goodness.
True.
Anyway, I've been taking cash out and I bought.
Or if you don't want to check, just take a picture of whatever area you need. And then just email that to Cons at Barstool Sports.
Oh, yeah.
And Cons will check it out.
Cons will check you for ticks. That's basically my save rounds. Have Cons check you for ticks. Send him videos of your body, whatever.
It. Yeah.
He loves it. He's
like one of those little monkeys in Nepal that's just like going.
Oh, yeah. He eats
fucking gross. Yeah.
He'll eat the ticks right off your body. He's very
That's what he's doing
fancy.
in France. He loves it.
The other thing, I know everybody's been like, when is she going to tell us? Like, what's going on? The whole show, people have been very excited to hear about the baby formula update that I went on for about an hour about last episode. The House passed a pair of bills Wednesday night to combat the formula shortage and get more on the shelves. It was the House voted 414-9. So pretty. Who didn't vote for it? Boebert, the usual crowd, the usual wackadoodle crowd. Yeah, the weirdo, the weirdos didn't vote for it.
The weirdo caucus.
The weirdo caucus. They are. Genuinely, if you look up the names of people who voted, the 9 who voted, it's the weirdo caucus. You probably know exactly who that is. 414-9 to approve a measure that would allow more formula to be purchased with money from a federal program that aids low-income women, infants, and children. Federal data shows that the Abbott formula that was pretty much gone from the shelves now, 89% of the million-plus infants covered by WIC relied on that. So they were the ones, as per usual, people without money are the ones suffering the most in that. In a more partisan vote, the House passed a bill that would send $28 million to the Food and Drug Administration to help boost formula supply and prevent future shortages. I get the hesitancy to that. I didn't read too much into it, but I feel like giving $28 million to the FDA, it just seemed like, I'm like, well, the FDA already fucked up. Like, what? I don't know. It just seems like more government bureaucracy. What are they really going to do with the money? I understand that, whatever. Anyways, the House action comes just hours after Biden announced that he was invoking the Defense Production Act to prioritize key ingredients for formula production and compel suppliers to provide needed resources to manufacturers. Also, military Operation Fly Formula. That's an actual operation now. U.S. military aircraft are going to be used to import formula from abroad. So Operation Fly Formula, there's military pilots out there whose mission it is right now, flying formula for the babies. So that's all I have on that. Hopefully that helps because it is rough out there. Do I have anything else? Normally I'm not Katie Save Rounds. I really want to drag this out since Cons isn't here.
Well, I have some questions for you, Kate, because one of the things that I've been noticing lately is when you kind of tweet and you come into Twitter and then you go out. So I want to give you an opportunity to explain some tweets if you don't mind.
What do you mean? I'll be tweeting a lot and then I go dark for a day or two?
Yeah, like you'll tweet and it'll be like you have one idea, you'll tweet a couple things and then you're like, boom, I'm out of here for a while. And then I'll come back. I have these ideas. So I want to get your thoughts on this. I bet the first people to start putting pockets on stuff were so excited to show everyone else. Did I forget my wallet? Ah ha ha, pal, you're not ready for this one.
Well, think about it.
Right.
Back in the day, to be the first one with pockets in town, and then everybody starts doing it.
Why don't ladies have pockets? So fucked up. It's a common complaint.
It's a common complaint because nobody cares about us, chaps. That's why.
Imagine being a Carolina Panther with a burrito in your fridge back home that you've been looking forward to all day. Then your game goes into overtime.
So I was watching the Carolina Hurricanes game.
Mm-hmm.
Mistakenly thought they were the Panthers. We're talking ice hockey here.
Right.
The joke was about like you have a tasty meal at home. You know, when you have a meal at home, you're so excited to get home because you're like, oh, I got this left over in the fridge. I can't wait to crush. Like when I'm drunk and I know I got like a chicken salad hoagie in the fridge at home, I'm like, hurry up, cab driver. I got a toasty one at home waiting for me. Imagine you're playing this game and all you can think about is this burrito in your fridge. And then the game goes into overtime. You're like, fuck. That was the joke.
You'd be fucking pissed.
Then you got to wait longer to get to your burrito. You see?
Yeah.
None of my tweets are doing well. Anyway.
Sumner retreat.